Richards and the world's most dangerous traffic reporter, Gary McHenry. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lassiter.
Well, hi there, fun seekers. 8 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock, Monday, June the 5th, 1989. I hope you seriously all had a good weekend. I couldn't care less. But it's one of those things, that you say to people, and besides, hey, it's already so many hours into Monday, you people have forgotten the weekend. This microphone is disgusting, and it gets more so every day. I mean, there is gunk on this thing like you would not believe. Whoa. And this thing was no prize package when I came over here, but the last year and a half, which I don't really think I had anything to do with, but it's just an accident of that. Anyway, I don't know where you guys stand on what I want to talk to you about today. And I'm really afraid that you don't have a hell of a lot of input in the way of an opinion on what I want to talk to you about. And that'll become more obvious as we get into the quote-unquote monologue. Yes, there will be a monologue today. You may sit down. It'll become more obvious. I'm not pulling your leg. I've been very seriously moved by the events unfolding in China during the past month or so. I find myself lurking around radios and television sets trying to hear the latest news. I sat absolutely glued to my television on the night they pulled the plug on the satellite coverage a couple of weeks ago. Sat there glued to the coverage, switching back and forth between CBS and CNN, wondering why NBC and ABC weren't there. I found it one of the most dramatic nights of my life. I shall never forget it as long as I live. I read everything that I can get my hands on. For some very strange reason, I have no particular affinity with the Chinese people. I don't have any Chinese blood in my blood. I don't know any Chinese. I've never been to China. But for some very strange reason, I'm very, very moved. Maybe it's because I'm envious of the people who will actually take their own fate into their own hands and do something about it. That might be one reason. And I am truly, truly saddened by the events of this past weekend. Events that apparently continue as we speak. And I do not pull your leg when I say I am saddened beyond words. I don't know what to say. I was horrified when I heard the first reports. I could not believe it. Of course, it was possible, but it was the unthinkable. The people paying the ultimate price, asking for but a fraction of what you and I take for granted, and are almost willing to abandon. Just a fraction of what you and I take for granted. Young people asking for a democratic communist party. Young people asking that corruption be at least somehow controlled. Paying the ultimate price. And to tell you the truth, I'm very, very confused by my nation's official response. And I'm very, very confused by the response of the citizens in my nation. And I've done a great deal of thinking about it. Yeah, I know you guys went out bowling over the weekend, and I basically sat home thinking about this nonsense. But then I got the good job and you guys don't. So I guess it all works itself out, huh? You got a suntan, I got a monologue. Seems to me that what we have here are good commies and bad commies. I can think of no other possible explanation for the restraint used officially in this nation, and possibly even the explanation for the restraint on the part of the average guy on the street in this nation, who can sure get himself worked up about some communist, but doesn't seem to have a hell of a lot to say about these communists. It's got to be good commies and bad commies. And I might cite as an example, obviously, the good commies in China. And I suppose, though there are several possibilities, what the hell, let's go for the last one you guys really got yourselves worked up over. The bad commies in Nicaragua. You see, apparently, the good commies live in Beijing. The good commies brutalize the simple people of Tibet And we import their AK-47 rifles and sell them a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise. The good commies gun down their own kids in the streets. And we sell the military equipment. Did you know that we sold the military equipment? I didn't. I was stunned when I found that out. Absolutely, positively stunned. Our president says that he deplored the use of violence by the good commies in Beijing without ever really saying that they were wrong for suppressing the movement in general. He never really said that he thought Deng Xiaoping and his government were wrong for suppressing simple requests for freedom. Use tear gas or cattle prods or maybe just wooden billy clubs instead of steel ones. It wouldn't have been quite so bad and would have been kind of okay. Now, the bad commies live in Managua. They have a General Assembly. Did you know that? And they actually have an opposition party that holds seats in the General Assembly. Did you know that? We mined their harbors. Why did we mine their harbors? Because the Russians were sending them military equipment to defend themselves from us. They allow free enterprise and private ownership in Managua. Did you know that? Some of the things that the kids in China were asking for, by the way. And we dropped packets of toys along with instructions on how to assassinate Nicaraguan officials. The good commies in Beijing permit no freedom of the press. The bad commies in Managua allow a newspaper that literally supports the rebels who would violently overthrow the official government in Managua. The good commies receive favorable treatment in exporting items to this nation. Things like clothing, for example. Things that actually put Americans out of work. The bad commies have a trade embargo thrown up against them. They can sell us nothing. The good commies maintain the largest standing army in the world. Millions of men and women. The bad commies maintain 165,000, and I am told we bend trade rules to aid the good commies. We bend our constitution to harass the bad commies. There is not one once massacred their own unarmed young people in the streets. And my government is talking about not lending them any more money at discounted rates for a while in retaliation. Hours to decide to, quote-unquote, suspend the sale of military items. My government says, whoa, now, wait a second here. You know, this calls for a measured response. You know, well, we might, we're considering a lot of things that we might do. Against them a couple of times in the UN. That'll show them. No, I'm not making these things up, ladies and gentlemen. The innocent people who live in a country ruled by the bad commies suffer serious food and health and hygiene shortages, and my government looks the other way. The innocent people who live in the country where the good commies predominate are shot down in the streets, and my government basically looks in the other way. They talk in terms of not lending them money at discounted rates. Not lending them money to buy U.S. military hardware. The good commies have a history of aiding in the death of American soldiers. Korea, Vietnam. And my government is considering a few unfavorable votes against them at the United Nations. The bad commies came to power in their country as a direct result of corrupt support, military and financially, by the U.S. against the right-wing government over there. They came to power as a direct result of a revolution fought to oust the corrupt sons of bitches And so we tried to oust them. The bad commies came to power that way. Young men in Nicaragua who come from the jungles, who come from the mountains, young men who know nothing of freedom, nor of democratic rule and process, are armed, outfitted, and urged to kill the bad commies. Young men who long for a democracy in China are urged to use restraint against the good commies. I don't understand that. In Tiananmen Square, there is a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise. In Managua, they closed down the Coca-Cola bottling plant. Could there be a coincidence? The dirt poor bad commies live in a nation of only 3 million peons. The good commies live in a potentially rich market of 1 billion plus. Could that be a coincidence? The good commies live in a nation that officially mandates abortion. An appalling thought to my president, I am told. The bad commies sanction a church that is opposed to abortion, that literally encourages women to be baby machines. I don't understand. The good commies are warming up to the Russian bear. You remember just a year or 2 or 3 ago, the evil empire? The bad commies find their relationship with the same animal somewhat cooler. I'm very, very, very confused.
You're on the air. What's your beef?
My steam iron leaves brown spots.
I just don't see how you can call yourself the leader of the free world. I don't see a free world because, again, I'm not aware of anything coming out of England, coming out of France, coming out of Spain, coming out of West Germany that deplored the Chinese government's refusal to give in to the demands. Frankly, there was more lip service coming out of the communist bloc. Not much, but more. For the past few years, I was encouraged at the progress emanating from the People's Republic of China, the little steps towards a free market, the little steps towards a little bit more in the way of news and information, a little bit more in the way of self-determination, not much, but a little bit, and I was encouraged by it. And I was crushed to learn this weekend that they were customers of our arms merchants. I could not believe that. I just could not believe that. Or are these not the same people that sold the Ayatollah Khomeini silkworm missiles? And we sell them weapons? And it took us 36 hours to decide to suspend the weapons sales? For how long? 30 days? 60, perhaps 90, 180? Would that be sufficient punishment for conducting a slaughter in Tiananmen Square and, who knows, maybe someplace else before it's all over? I am devastated that we couch our language for fear of offending butchers and murderers, even if they are good customers. We lash out in the most brutal terms at legitimate governments that defend themselves from political foes that we fund and equip. In Afghanistan, the government there was, these guys are real SOBs for trying to defend themselves. So let's give a bunch of right-wing lunatic Muslim fundamentalists some very sophisticated weapons. We lash out at the government in Nicaragua for trying to defend itself from us and our attempt to violently overthrow it against everything that civilized society supposedly stands for. We have no problem whatsoever lashing out at the Sandinistas for defending themselves, a legitimate government, legitimate enough that we recognize it. They're murdering sons of bitches. They're butchers. But Deng Xiaoping, he's a customer. No, we talk in hushed diplomatic tones against governments that slaughter their own defenseless sons and daughters. so long as they're customers. Another missile there, Mr. Dung. How about a tank? Could I show you my latest bombs, Mr. Dung? Americans, by the tens of millions, supported the right-wing thugs in Nicaragua. They supported them with passion and with bravado. But for the most part, they have ignored decent, nonviolent, common people in China. I simply do not understand. I can well understand when some right-wing son of a bitch has his Coca-Cola bottling company taken away from him and he gets a little bit PO'd. But I don't understand a nation of Americans that go berserk supporting him and don't seem to have any care whatsoever for some common people who use nonviolent means who have had their rights taken away from them. The right to read a competing newspaper, the right to have a couple of different people on the ballot. I simply do not understand. We cut off relations with the bad commies because they insisted that we keep our noses out of their affairs. We brought our diplomats home, closed our embassies in many cases. But we don't even send a note of protest to the government of the good communists that cuts down their own people in the street in cold blood. We prolonged a bloody war in Afghanistan for 8 miserable years. God only knows how many deaths. Because the people did not have democracy. We did the exact same thing in Nicaragua for 8 bloody years. Because, as my beloved leader at that time, Ronald Reagan, told me, they couldn't form labor unions. And because the government was getting a little bit PO'd with the newspaper, was advocating its violent overthrow. We bellowed. We called names. And we sent support, financial support, hardware support, military hardware support. We sent people and advisors. Because the people in Afghanistan, the people in Nicaragua, were not being butchered straight. But didn't have freedom of the press. Didn't have the right to form. But against the good communists in China. Now, maybe another bomb, Mr. Dung. 2 for 1 today. The good commies, we urge restraint. Restraint, of course, for killing their people in the streets. But we also urge the opposition. People who can't form labor unions. The people who don't have a free press. People who don't have a democratic process. Ah, yes, we urge restraint on them, too. Because, my goodness, if all of this turmoil, I suppose, continues to go on in China, who are we going to sell the bombs to? The issues are the same in all 3 nations. As a matter of fact, they're much worse in China now. And we urge restraint on both sides. The truth of the matter is that there is nothing that we can or could do in China, Nicaragua, and Afghanistan. There's literally nothing we can do. It's nothing we should do. It is a matter for the people of those nations. As bloody as it gets, as unpleasant as it gets. If it is to be, it will be. But for God's sakes, can we not see our own hypocrisy? We are not interested in fostering democracy around the globe. We're only interested in winning some kind of a game in Nicaragua and Afghanistan. We thought that we could entertain the folks back home with a victory. Give them something to watch on the tube. Give them something to, hey, tap their chests about. Yeah, we're number 1. But in China, thank God, we know better. We will not be sending rockets to the dissidents in China. There will not be another Oliver North putting together some type of contrived, unbelievably convoluted scheme to fund the dissidents in China. You see, the Americans, foolishly sensing victory, got behind the cause in Nicaragua. They got behind the cause in Afghanistan because they thought to kick a little ass, you know what I mean? And I guess even the dumb, beer-swizzling American is smart enough to realize they ain't going to kick no ass in China. In this case, hey, who cares about the dumb chinks out there? And they're what, their goddess of freedom or whatever it was. See, in the case of the bad commies, the people loved harsh rhetoric. They loved when George or Ronnie or anybody else didn't really make a damn bit of difference to them would get up and say things like, we'll move any mountain, ford any river, until the jackals are brought to justice. They love that kind of rhetoric. Especially if whoever was delivering it could kind of get a tear to just pop up at the right time when they pulled in for a close-up, start trickling down his or her cheek. Against the good commies, we just don't seem to notice the limp-wristed response.
Well, we're probably going to not lend them money at favorable rates now. And we're going to suspend arms sales to them. That'll teach them.
When they called George a wimp, they weren't talking about his physical demeanor. I guess this is what they were talking about. If it's an appropriate response to embargo and isolate a bad communist nation that has no record of butchering its own unarmed people, what might the response be against a known butcher? I should think at least the same, wouldn't you? At least the same. Are you at all troubled by our official response? I mean, at all troubled by it? Are you at all troubled by our national devil-may-care attitude about any of this? Is it not sexy enough for you? Is that what the problem is? Will you talk to me about it? Please? I mean, I would have expected language out of this administration at least as harsh as that used against liberal Democrats. At least as harsh. I would have expected language out of this administration at least as harsh as that used against a teenage girl seeking to terminate a pregnancy. If she's a murderer, then why in the hell is not Deng Xiaoping? If this administration has no problem whatsoever calling a teenage girl trying to get out of a pregnancy a murderer, what in the hell are they afraid of with Deng Xiaoping? Why isn't Deng Xiaoping as much of a murderer in the view of George Bush as some poor girl? Where are the harsh words used against a man who did nothing more than mess up the Massachusetts state budget? Is not a man who orders the slaughter of his own people worthy of at least the same? If the crimes of Willie Horton turned George Bush's stomach, why do not the crimes of Deng Xiaoping? If a man who vetoed a bill requiring a Pledge of Allegiance was not fit to run a nation, then why is the man who ordered the destruction of a papier-mâché goddess of freedom and the people around it fit to run a nation? Is not Deng Xiaoping worthy of at least the same criticism as Walter Mondale, Jesse Jackson, or even Ted Kennedy? If a party, an administration, and I'm told a man, can question whether or not Ted Kennedy killed somebody, why in the hell can't they question whether or not Deng Xiaoping did? I don't believe Deng was drunk or horny. I encourage the opening of relations with a communist nation and the exchange of dialogue and the exchange of trade. I would welcome it on Cuba, Nicaragua. But when a man does what this monster has done, I do not see why one has to think twice before expressing an opinion. I do not see why one has to be couched in diplomatic language. I mean, a simple call on a talk radio show from Carolyn in Newport Richie or from TJ in Clearwater evokes more outrage than a massacre in China. No, we are no longer the leaders of the free world. Not at all. We are nothing more than the leaders of the export of weapons. And after all, hey, a customer's a customer. And apparently, a customer is a terrible thing to lose. Like I said, it took 36 hours before George even suspended arms sales. I am deeply ashamed of this administration. If people in China are willing to give up their lives for a more democratic communist party, can you imagine what they would do for true freedom? Do they not at least deserve the full support of the United States of America? Arms contracts and Kentucky Fried Chicken franchises be damned. Let me give you the telephone numbers. I have a funny feeling we're going to have a rough afternoon this afternoon for a lack of response, which is going to put me in very foul humor since I just poured my little heart out to you. But I'll try anyway. 990-9352 in Hillsborough. 990-WFLA. In Pinellas, 461-9352, 461 WFLA. And, of course, there is the practical joke line at 1-223-9797.
About the only time things ever...
3:42 the time, one line available. It is in Pinellas County, 461-9352, 461 WFLA. Pinellas, of course, being a hotbed of freedom and democracy in other people's towns. Tampa, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hello.
Hi.
When I first heard the accounts of the massacre and the slaughter, I was quick to look over at my wife and tell her the fact that nobody called it a slaughter or a murder. They just called it an action or basically described what happened. And what I consider the mealy-mouthed press just didn't call it for what it was.
Well, so the people I heard were quite shaken, and they were calling it slaughters and massacres.
Okay, well, at least the initial accounts I heard on the press didn't. As for George Bush, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to be glib here, didn't surprise me in the least. Unfortunately, I'm used to, I don't say I accept it or lie down, but I'm used to the typical wait and see or mealy-mouthed reply, as you say, speaking in political rhetoric.
Well, I would think that at least Deng Xiaoping would have been lashed with the lips as bad as Jesse Jackson. I should think at least.
Well, there's Jesse Jackson is less to fear ultimately than
I mean,
China.
one's a nigger, the other's a chink. It's reasonably safe in America to beat up on a chink, isn't it?
It's safe to do it in America, but it's certainly not safe to do it when you're thinking of the hundreds and hundreds of $1 million to be gained in keeping your mouth shut and not rocking the boat when you think of all the future trade and business that's going to be done.
I mean, my God, all Jim Wright ever did was make people buy his books. He never slaughtered anybody.
Yeah, well...
Couldn't the rhetoric have been at least as harsh as it was against Jim Wright?
Well, of course, you and I know not only it could have, to say the least, but it should have. But again, we know unfortunately why it wasn't, and it's not going to be. It's just not going to be. The people who have future moneyed interests in that country, be it arms or fast foods or what have you, don't want to take a chance and rock the boat.
What an incredibly sad realization to have to come to, because when you sit down and really think about it, you are left with virtually no other alternative to explain away golly, where people will vote against them so you win a few times.
Yeah. The other thing is and when this student uprising first reached our press popularly, I guess a few weeks ago, I also looked at my wife and said, interesting, America or Americans could learn a good hard lesson in what it is to fight and become activated in freedom, because we certainly aren't, and unfortunately now, Americans can get the accurate and fearful message that if you, and perhaps use it as an excuse, unfortunately, not to do anything, but if you stand up and you scream too loud, maybe they'll mow you down in this country if there are too many of you.
Yeah, maybe.
Take care.
Be good. 990-9352 in Hillsborough, the only place there's a line available. Tampa, you're on the air at 970 WFLA. Hi, Tampa.
Bob.
Yeah.
First time caller, a little nervous. When I heard your monologue today, I felt like you were reading my mind. I've been saying these exact same things to my wife for the past several weeks. And this insane obsession we have with Nicaragua has bothered me for years. It's just amazing how we can separate into good commies and bad commies.
That's obviously what it comes down to. Nicaragua is only 3 million dirt poor people. You must have at least 150, maybe 250 million. In China, I know there are a billion people, but...
I believe it's 7 billion.
No. It's just slightly over 1 billion. But at least a couple of 100 million of them have to be good potential customers for whatever it is that you're trying to sell them.
Oh, yeah.
I can see no other explanation, and it pains me deeply to say that. What other explanation is there? Business.
It is.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
990-9352 in Hillsborough, 461-9352 in Pinellas. Lutz, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Afternoon, Bob.
Afternoon, sir.
You hit a nail right on the head. It's strictly business. And brought to mind an old George Carlin saying that when the Americans go sticking their noses in places, it's always to whip a little industry on them. And he always found it interesting that the middle two letters of industry were U.S. And there can be no other explanation. And, I've been riveted to CNN for the last 4 days. I don't think I've had my TV off of CNN for more than a few minutes. And I'm watching right now. This one guy that walked out and stopped the column of the tanks, he's got more backbone than everybody in the Bush administration if you combine them.
I think the guy driving the tank does.
Well, either one of the two. One of the two. I'm not sure. The one guy realized that he was probably going to die, and the guy driving the tank figures, well, he may be dead now too, and got tossed out someplace. And I'm thoroughly disgusted with this administration's reaction.
I appreciate that there is nothing that we can do except to lend lip service. But when you can call a teenage girl a murderer, and you're afraid to call some bastard, some 80-year-old plus bastard who is a murderer, then you just ain't got no spunk, and you certainly have no claim whatsoever to be the leader of the free world.
You're so right, and you're right. There's nothing we can do other than, but I think the lip service should be of the same rhetoric, the same harshness that we've used in other situations.
Yeah, like against our own Democratic Party.
Yeah, that was
at least that's tough, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean let's go back to the whole start of this in '82 when Jim Watt said what was it? He didn't use Democrats and Republicans, it was Americans and liberals or something like that. It's that whole attitude that's pervasive.
Well, I guess really what we should do, those of us who are of a liberal persuasion in at least some areas, should start ordering arms from the Bush administration, and then we'd probably become, full citizens again. At least thought as highly of as the Chinese government.
Well, I don't know about from the Bush government, but I've seen some magazines that there are certain arms dealers in West Germany and Austria and France where we can order up an APC for about $1.5 million. I can get you ammunition for 105 millimeter recoilless rifle.
Well, I guess
it can be ordered.
Indirectly buying from the administration, so it might count a little bit.
Well, that's true too. He does have some arms dealers friends that should probably get their cut out of it.
We'd probably be thought of then at least as highly as the Russians.
Well, or
if not our good buddies.
An interesting point. Do you realize that because a couple of commies killed another couple of commies, we invaded a country not too long ago?
Yep. Sure do.
That was only 8 or 9 commies killing 8 or 9 other commies. Oh, that was half the population of Grenada.
Yep. But thank God these lunatics don't apparently have or coming away with the impressions they could do something like that.
Oh, heaven forbid.
Thank you, my
Bye,
friend.
Bob.
990-9352 in Hillsborough, 990-WFLA. If you have any thoughts on what's going on in China at all, or any thoughts on why your Prez, the leader of the Western world, never really came out in full support of people who supposedly were asking for freedom.
There are fears in China this afternoon that forces...
You're on the air, 970 WFLA.
Hello, Bob.
Hi.
I have to say that I agree with you here today. I wonder if they waited until they completed their two largest wheat deals that they've ever put together with the United States before they murdered these students and people over there in China. You know, they just bought two purchases. One was in excess of 250,000 tons of wheat from the United States. That is, China did.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, I did not know that, by the way.
Yeah, well, those two purchases came down last week, so they might have been holding off to do all this until they complete their wheat deal. You know, I called you here maybe at least a month ago, and I told you that remember the obedient consumer. And
well, you know,
it seems like the obedient consumer syndrome is behind everything that's happening in the world.
Well, as a businessman, I suppose I could sit here and somehow try to justify, well, you know, doing business is very important. A lot of people earn their livings and so forth and so on. I could understand that. But if I also try to pass myself off as a champion for democracy and a champion for freedom, freedom and democracy are not practical. They are dreams. They are ideals. And if you're going to call yourself a champion of these things, then you too have to be a bit of an idealist and a bit of a dreamer and sometimes take a chance. Because in order to foster a dream, you have to let people know that it's not silly to dream. You have to let people know that you'll support them in their dreams.
That's exactly right. You know, there's not a government anywhere, and I don't know how you define democracy or how you define communism. I don't see...
You can have democratic communism.
Well,
communism in and of itself is probably more democratic than capitalism.
Well, and you're exactly right, and that was what I was going to follow up with here and say that most governments, and I don't really know of a government anywhere that doesn't fit this category, and that is a monopolistic oligarchy. In other words, a few people are in control, the oligarchy, and it runs under a monopoly. And if you look in our country here today, who owns all the oil? Who owns all the things that we need? Every country in the world is ruled by just a few people.
Well, it is rather amusing, isn't it, I suppose, especially if you want to bring up those things, that things like oil
exactly
are not controlled by the democracy.
No.
No democratic control or say whatsoever.
Exactly. No, it's set gold prices, oil prices, and precious commodities are all set each day in a room of anywhere from 5 to 12 people.
Which, of course, are things supposedly given to us by our Creator.
That's right, and there is no free market. There is no free. For instance, our government is supporting the dairy farmers, and I don't have anything against them, but our government's been buying milk for the last 30 years. The real price of milk should be somewhere around 75 cents or $1 a gallon, but our tax money buys that milk so that they can charge us more to keep the prices up in the store. And we're looking at obedient consumers is all the people that are making the profits want. And they don't care if they have to kill millions to do it.
Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
990-9352 in Hillsborough. Clearwater, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Yes, sir. You claim you have all this apathy for these Chinese people?
Yes, sir. I have all the apathy, right?
Yeah, well, you know, what I don't understand is, you know, your ratings must be down. You pick an issue like this to try to drum up business.
No, sir. If my ratings were down, I'd pick an issue like sex.
But, you know, the thing is...
What I would really do, sir, is I would pick an issue like masturbation so that you could partake in it. Largo, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hey, hi. I hate to inject reason into this discourse, but I wanted to straighten you out on one as part of this thing. You seem to feel that there's something nasty and dirty about trade and commerce, and we didn't attack...
No, sir. I don't think there's anything nasty and dirty about trade and commerce. What I think is nasty and dirty is when you allow trade and commerce to come in between in doing what's right.
Well, the United States didn't attack those students in China.
I don't believe anybody said they did, sir. Don't be a smart ass with you're gone.
You don't need much of an excuse to criticize the government, but what do you want? You wouldn't want him to declare war and sever relations with them, and yet he has come out against the action over there. I thought
sir,
that...
sir, since we now, for all practical purposes, severed relations and declared war on Nicaragua, Nicaragua never slaughtered its children in the street.
Nicaragua
never left its borders. Excuse me, sir, I was in the middle of a sentence. Nicaragua never lost its borders, left its borders in an expansionist move. So all I would hope for, sir, is that we might have done the same to Nicaragua as I guess we're doing to China.
Nicaragua is getting billions of dollars worth of military equipment from Russia, and China has never tried to. China has never tried to spread communists throughout the world, which the Russians have done. And the Russians have the Russians have enslaved half the world in the last 40 years.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, sir, not billions of dollars. Sorry.
The UPI and 8
blew away my phone call, just because at 20 minutes after the hour, 4 o'clock, we're supposed to go. But the FM wants to talk to him, so the FM just talks and talks and talks away. So we'll wait here. What the hell? What the hell? This is only the AM side. If anybody in management ever listened to this AM station, it might be very interesting. I don't do weather. I don't know why they tell you to bring that stuff in here. I really don't. It's not even on the log. The guy that tells you to bring it in, he's the one that made up the log. It's not even on there. Incredible. We'll continue the show as soon as the people on the FM side are finished talking to Gary McHenry. Whoa! There it is.
Oh, he's going to be in a bad mood now.
Well, it's just I blew away a caller, so I could be on time for you. It was a good caller,
well,
too.
That was nice of you, Bob.
And, but, over there, chatty.
Chatty Markey.
Our beloved Gary McHenry, the world's most dangerous and tardy air traffic controller, with his washboard timepiece, bronzed and all that kind of stuff, Gary. Hey, Gary, in real radio guy kind of talk. How's it looking for the trip home for the listeners, Gary?
Take a licking and keep on ticking. And traffic right now, if you are headed out I-4, for some reason, I'm trying to figure out why it's slowing.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
I ran around to like 3 or 4 different phone booths before I could get a chance to get through, and I'm glad I got through. Basically, my response to all of this, I'm taking a more of a humanistic and emotional issue than economic and academic issue. I sat there Saturday morning, and I've basically been following it off and on, but Saturday morning I sat in front of the television and I watched as CBS, NBC, and ABC, they broke the special reports. And at the same time, I was very, very happy for the people because they were standing up for their convictions. They were doing something that very few people have the guts to do, to pay the ultimate price. But at the same time, I was very saddened to see that their own government would turn against them. And it sort of
reminds... It's not just their own government, it's their own people. It goes beyond government.
Yeah, I'm beginning to understand that now. Like I was saying, I'm taking a more of a emotional side. I wasn't thinking of Bush's response and, the economic issue, but by listening to you and the callers, I'm beginning to understand, and it's making more sense, and it's making me more and more angry. But right now, my thoughts and my feelings are with the people. My thoughts and my feelings are with the families and with... When I looked in the St. Petersburg Times yesterday on 12A, they showed the picture of the guy with his head bashed in. And, I mean, I just...
Well, you see, I'm right there along with you. That's why I'm very angry. And it's why I'm somewhat sickened that, in essence, some of the responses that are being considered by my government, my official representative for these people that you speak of, who have suffered personal tragedy, is that we may up your interest rate at the World Bank.
I know. I don't... It's like this world is so damn corrupt. It's like people don't give a damn about anybody anymore. And this, I don't understand. I really don't. America the beautiful, America the great, we're nothing. We don't care. All we care about is the almighty dollar. We'll kill our mother. We'll step on our brother forward. We don't care about these people who are sacrificing their lives for something we've stood on a soapbox and declared for years, democracy. And we just don't give a damn. People are dying. People are dying. It's not funny. People are actually being killed. This is it. That's their life. It's over, and nobody cares.
Thank you very much.
That could happen anywhere, Bob. We need to wake up.
Thank you very much. Be good. 990-9352 in Hillsborough. One line open. No, I take that back. There are two lines open. They're both in Pinellas. 461-9352. Please totally disregard that other number. 461-9352. 461-WFLA. And in essence, if you haven't caught on to this point, China. I'll start with you. WFLA.
Yes, Bob, this is Roy, and this is my first time calling in your show. And my sentiments are exactly as the woman that just called. I sat there and cried Saturday and Sunday for those people that were dying and stuff like that. And then this morning when I was sitting here listening to the president, I just wanted to hit him for being so stupid and asinine for the way he reacted to the whole situation.
Well, for example, in our last major top-of-the-hour newscast, there was a piece of tape on there, Bushy speaking, saying that he really wished that they would withdraw to their positions of a few days ago. He is yet really to come out to say that he really wishes that they would capitulate.
He reminds me of Jimmy Carter. Oh my, I didn't think he was a wimp until today. He actually showed his guts, which he has none.
Well, I don't know why you would, try to find some kind of analogy between he and Jimmy Carter, but if that turns you on, that's okay, because Jimmy Carter at least did the decent thing.
That's right.
George Bush has not done the decent thing. He has not honored the dead people in China. All he has done is threatened to cut off their arms sales and up their interest rates.
Almost wanted to say, what do you need, Dan Rather in front of your face again for you to get mad? That's how I feel, Bob. I'm upset with the president, and I feel for the people of China, and some of these callers that are calling in here really have no guts as far as feelings are concerned, and it's a damn shame. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
990-9352 in Hillsborough, 461-9352 in the other place. Bradenton, you're on the air at 970 WFLA.
Hello?
Hi.
It finally had to happen. I finally had to agree with you on something. It took long enough, but I just thought I'd say that...
Well, that's okay, because I basically find myself in agreement with Jesse Helms, which doesn't please me either.
It has to happen once in a while, right?
Yeah.
But, when it comes to Bush's, I think that he really needs to say something much, stronger. I mean, it's just... I was reading the paper about all the Western leaders, and they're all their comments. I mean, Margaret Thatcher saying that she's appalled by the indiscriminate shooting of unarmed people. I mean, appalled. I mean, she doesn't really say anything. I mean, some of the other Mitterrand doesn't really come out. He just says that the Chinese are we should give them contempt.
When did Maggie ever say she was appalled at the lack of freedom in China?
Yeah.
Never.
Well, one of the things I'd also like to point out is a lot of people are saying, that this is, something relatively new, that under Mao, I was reading about how they said that Mao himself admitted that 800,000 people were executed in China between 1949 and 54, which they say is, a very, very conservative estimate. They say
at least probably political foes.
Well, but see, what do you think? The students are political foes of the current Chinese government.
Serious political foes, people who fought them.
Well, but no, more than that, though. I mean, they also got rid of intellectuals. They got rid of, anybody who was Western educated. But one of the things I'd also like to point out is you were saying about Afghanistan. Well, Afghanistan also, the Soviets did, and the Afghan government did bomb villages. I mean, they killed civilians. I mean, this wasn't a nice, friendly government, the government of Afghanistan. They came to power in 1978, the bloody coup.
I beg your pardon, sir. I was not necessarily suggesting that we should not have had harsh rhetoric against Afghanistan.
Well,
I was suggesting that if it goes there, it goes the other place, too. My friend, I'm up against a Gary McHenry traffic report, and you know how testy he gets when I'm late.
Tuned in late, but I guess the gist of it is Bush not having enough spine to take on the Chinese communists.
Well, George Bush as well as the rest of the American people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Bush, I wonder what Bush would have done in Grenada or any of the other hot incidents we would have had. Gone fishing in Kennebuck, I guess, and just hope it goes away.
Oh, no, I'm sure that George Bush would have done the same thing in Grenada that, our beloved leader Ronald Wilson Reagan did.
Because that's an easier...
people. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, it's a shame. It really is. Do you know if Gorbachev made any statements on the?
Not to the best of my knowledge, but hey, that's not surprising, is it? That's what we would expect.
Well, we would expect he wouldn't, because let's face it, he's got his hands full. And by the way, did you catch his town hall meeting type democracy sessions of the
Corby's?
Yeah, in the Congress over the weekend.
No, I did not.
There was some great tape on. It looked like a small town open town meeting type session. Everybody got a chance to say what exactly they wanted, and I'll tell you, they said what they wanted, and it was allowed. It was kind of refreshing. And I guess you can't blame him for cutting down the Chinese on this latest incident. But I tell you, if he would, it would probably really show some strength. But he's got his hands full with that catastrophe.
Well, one of the things that I had mentioned is I wished he would have spoken as harshly of Deng Xiaoping as his administration does of, let's say, Teddy Kennedy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wish he could have thought of something a little bit more creative than suspending arms sales. They shouldn't have been selling them arms in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish they could think of more things a little bit more creative than upping their interest rates.
I agree. You mentioned something about Nicaragua and the...
Well, in my monologue, I was talking about good commies and bad commies. And apparently, we have good commies in China and bad commies in Nicaragua. And one of the things that, I've never heard of Daniel Ortega shooting his citizens in the middle of the street as unarmed children.
That's right.
That's
right.
Right now, China's kind of snuggling up to Russia, and it's Russia and Nicaragua that aren't getting along all that well. Little things like that, back and forth. And the only thing I could possibly come up with is there is a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise in Tiananmen Square, and they closed the Coca-Cola bottling company in Nicaragua, and I wonder if there's any correlation there at all.
Well, what do you think Bush should have done? What do you he should have...
the same thing that we've done against other despicable bastards in this life, to legitimize the government in China. For any further for another 5 minutes is unforgivable.
Yeah, he can pick on guys like Noriega, who virtually are helpless down there. I mean, Noriega's kind of flailing in the wind. His days are numbered. But you're right. It just shows you how far this country has sunk.
Outside of lip
I
service,
keep preaching, Bob, on lack of leadership, and I think you just hit it right on the head again. That this is a classic example of why.
Outside of lip service, there's not a damn thing that we can do, Gene. Nor is there anything that we should do outside of lip service. But lip service, they should get every last word.
But do you think, Bob, that the corporate chieftains had any role to play on this? That hey, Bushy, let's hold back now because we got a $1 billion market over there.
Directly, no, but it's obviously there's somewhere on the back of his mind. Gene, I got to run.
Thanks.
Don Richards standing by at the WFLA news desk. Donald.
Random shooting is reported in Beijing, China today.
WFLA.
Hey, Bob.
Hi.
How you doing today?
Fine, thanks.
Listen, I agree with you totally that President Bush is spineless, but obviously he has his brain in gear. We probably killed more fetuses this morning between 9 and 9:30 in these rooms where these abortion clinics are than what'll ever be shot in China in the square of these dissident students.
Yeah.
If we moved our slaughter out into the streets like the Chinese have, maybe the people would rally against what we're doing right here.
So in other words, you don't really give a damn about what's going on in China. You just want to advance your little abortion thing.
No, this is not true. But how can a president who knows what's going on in his own country turn around and be so damn hypocritical as to tell them what they can do over there? We can't even stop it here.
Sir, I beg your pardon. This is a president who has called little girls murderers, but doesn't call us fat. But doesn't call us fat buddy in China a murderer. Now get off my phone, you jerk. Bradenton, you're on the air, 970 WFLA.
Thank you, Bob. I hate to follow a right to life. Just ruined it.
Unbelievable. He's got this president who does call little teenage girls murderers.
Absolutely.
But won't call a son of a
too.
bitch a murderer.
I'm just so glad I got home before Paul Harvey started, because I, in a moment of madness, Saturday
with the schedule that he has on, nobody gets home before Paul Harvey starts.
I don't know why I did it, but Saturday I called Saving Sam, and I asked him to explain to me the difference between this good communist, bad communist thing. I couldn't figure it out, and I thought since he was an expert, he could explain it to me. And he said that the difference between the Nicaraguan communists and the Chinese communists it was a great gulf of difference between the two. that was the explanation.
By the way, Saving Sam will be my guest tomorrow. Perhaps we can have a better explanation.
Oh, I'll have to leave work early or something. But what I wanted to tell you was, this is to help you. This guy helped me, and I want to share it with you. After I hung up, a caller called Sam and said that obviously I didn't know anything about the Monroe Doctrine. And, I mean, that explained it for me completely. Apparently, some words in George Washington's farewell speech that President Monroe picked up on and used as a statement that we wouldn't allow Europe to come and colonize again in this hemisphere is apparently used by these conservatives to explain invasions that we're doing or want to do everywhere. And I thought maybe he's got that confused with manifest destiny.
Well, whether or not there's a Monroe Doctrine principle here involved in what's going on in Central America is something I suppose we could theoretically debate until the cows come home. However, that still doesn't let Georgie off the hook for calling Deng Xiaoping a murderer.
That's true. I agree with you completely, Bob. And I would just want to say that I listened to you by accident during the Iran-Contra hearings, and since then I've grown to admire the clarity of your perceptions and the consistency of your principles.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Break at 5:30 with 5-6 call. Clearwater, hi, Clear. You're on there at 970 WFLA.
Bob Lassiter.
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine,
I won't even ask.
Well, actually,
I
fine.
Sir?
Stiffness, I had my shoulder. It just went away.
I know. I don't want to get into that. I don't have that much time, neither do you. I don't agree. I mean, I don't not necessarily disagree, but I don't see the parallel or the reason for the Bush bashing. Now, let me just finish, if I may.
I don't know that it's Bush bashing. It's Bush disappointment, sir.
Well, I don't mean, a rainy day, in my opinion, for you is Bush bashing. That's only my opinion. Number one, paralleling Jesse Jackson or Michael Dukakis or Ted Kennedy with Yang killing 3,000 or maybe 3,000 students is not even a good parallel.
I thought
I could finish. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, but you're accusing me of something I didn't do.
No, I'm saying that's the parallel.
No, sir. What I was saying is I wish that he had been as hard on Deng, or Dung, as he had been on other people in the past. What I'm saying is that Jesse Jackson has done nothing more than suggest that maybe poor people are getting dumped on in this country. Deng Xiaoping has killed a couple of thousand people. Jesse Jackson gets a harder time from Bush.
Of course, he's in a political race. He's an opponent, a political opponent, and our national political thing has nothing to do with China whatsoever.
George Bush is a human being first and foremost, and president secondly.
Well, let me, if I may finish, okay? Number two, probably more important, and maybe you haven't been to China, maybe you have. I was fortunate enough to go there. Doesn't mean anything. However, there's got to be, and I'm saying conservatively, right now, between tourists and business people and students and this and that, there's got to be 5 or 6 or maybe 10,000 Americans in China right now as we speak. You've got to handle this thing in a very tentative, kid-glove situation. What are you going to do? I mean, come on. Let's be realistic.
I think that perhaps the first thing you could have done is anticipated it several weeks ago and gotten those 10 or 15 or 20 or 50,000 people out.
Based on what? Based on you're going to ruin a diplomatic relationship with a major ally.
You're going to ruin a diplomatic relationship with a killer, sir?
He wasn't a killer 2 or 3 weeks ago, Mr. Lassiter.
Have you ever heard of Tibet?
Sir?
Have you ever heard of Tibet?
Well, are we talking about Tibet or are we talking about China?
We're talking about Deng Xiaoping and his government, sir. That's what we're talking about.
We're talking about China and the United States relations. We're not talking about China.
No, sir, we're talking about the leaders of China who have a long history of brutality.
That's right. Well, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Mr. Lassiter, with all due respect, I didn't hear you condemning China.
I beg your pardon, sir.
I did not hear you 2 or 3 weeks ago condemning the leaders of China.
I beg your pardon, sir. It was about 2 weeks ago. It was about 2 weeks ago when I did my China show, sir.
Maybe I missed it. Based on 40 years of persecution over there.
These aren't the same leaders that were there 40 years ago. I'm willing to.
But then that's okay. We can blame Bush for 40 years of persecution on leaders that weren't there. But let's not talk 2 weeks ago. Come on.
What? I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about, blaming Bush for something that happened 40 years ago? I've done no such thing, sir.
Well, anyway, let me just make my last and final statement, if I may. In my opinion, China has a great more to lose than you will ever think of economically, and I'm not talking about our Coca-Cola people, or our Kentucky Fried people, or our McDonald's people in there. Our export-import ratio, I don't know about the weaponry, okay? I don't know that. I'm talking about economic goods. We are importing, or they are importing far more to our country and to our economy, and their economy is based largely on their exporting of their goods.
Do you like banana Slurpees?
Sir?
Do you like banana Slurpees?
No, I don't.
It's amazing. I would have sworn that you did, because if you're trying to tell me that I'm supposed to overlook the deaths of 500, 3,000, 4,000 kids in the middle of the street because we do a lot of business with the Chinese.
That's not the point. You missed the point. You're going to misconstrue what I just said. I said their economic loss will far exceed our economic loss because of their export ratio.
Yeah,
I was on Tiananmen. I was there 2 years ago. I talked with students. I cried too this weekend. I was saddened this week. Those kids are great kids over there. They can't get married before they're 21. They can't date before they're 18. They can't have more than one child if it's a boy.
And they can't ask for freedom and expect to get the support of the United States president. That is the real tragedy. 990-9352 in Hillsborough, 4 on the air at 970 WFLA.
Bob, I am just really shocked by your show today.
Oh, how's that?
Oh, my God. Are all these people out in La La Land, don't they understand what is going on over there?
They don't give a damn.
Oh, my God. I can't believe this. You know, they are taking tanks and army and going to the university. They're going after the ones that were marching and the ones that weren't marching, the innocent ones.
Right,
they're all innocent.
but people are more concerned that we not bash Bush.
Oh, my God. Well, he's the worst one as far as being out in La La Land. My Lord, I just can't believe this. All these people are being killed. They're hunting them down. They're, and these are the kids.
Hey,
the future of tomorrow.
But look now, George has called off some official visits to send a strong message.
Well, that sure is going to pull them up short, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And they're seriously considering several votes against him at the UN.
Oh, yes, that is just a real fit punishment for killing. What is it now? 7,000 people?
Well, that's the latest estimate. It's probably a high. I pray that it's high.
Even if it's 1 or 2 or 10. This is absolutely obscene. I cannot believe the people calling. They are rationalizing economics. They're rationalizing sweet little old Bushy. Oh my.
These are not armed insurgents. This is not a revolutionary move by some guerrilla organization.
No.
These are young men and women, unarmed, relatively peaceful, relatively disciplined, being slaughtered in the streets.
And all they're asking for is a little bit of rationality and a chance at the world. Geez, if the same thing had happened here and we had the teabag revolution.
Yeah.
Come on, people, look at what's happening.
Except that there's a difference. At least the people in Boston Harbor were destroying property. There is no indication whatsoever.
No, I'm talking about the recent teabag revolution.
Oh.
Well, that's... But, I mean... maybe we should send a few people over there if they don't have what it takes upstairs to conceive of what the heck is going on.
Don't say the same stupid things the other side says.
Oh, all right. It's just absolutely obscene what I'm hearing on your station today. And it's not just a few people sounding that way. It's a bunch of them.
There's no outcry throughout the land, none whatsoever concerning this or anything else going on in China right now. So one just has to reasonably assume that the vast majority of American people, who, while they pay great lip service when it suits them to freedom and democracy around the world, just don't really give a damn. Just don't really give a damn unless, there's something in it for them.
Yeah, something usually economic or Republican.
No. For the people in this country, no. A good show on the television news at night. I got to run. I'm fresh out of time. What can I say? Be good.
Yeah, rotten show, Bob.
Save and Sam tomorrow, perhaps, to clear up some of these things.